guys, welcome to the Middle American Outdoors Fireside Chat. This is week 7, I believe, episode number 7. Let me see if I can answer Jake here. So while we're bringing Jake on, he's just calling in, we're getting it connected here. If you guys can hear me, somebody just leave a comment. Is that better? I don't know why those headphones aren't working right now. Hopefully that's better.
So hopefully it's better now that those headphones are off and you can hear me good. This is Matt, and again, welcome to Middle American Outdoors Fireside Chat for week 7, episode number 7. We've got Jake on. I have not heard definitively from Ben whether he's going to be on or not. If you guys are able to hear on there on either one of the lives, leave a comment, let us know. Let's see. I do have them open back here, as you can see, so I can keep up with comments. If you guys have questions or want to chime in your personal experiences on the topics, that's what we're doing these lives for. As you're well aware, we do rip the audio and produce a podcast later in the week, a shorter version of the talk, where we can edit out all these live errors and glitches and audio malfunctions and everything else that we work through as we're learning this stuff. But it's also an opportunity for you guys here to leave comments. Thanks, Brexton, for being on there and helping make it work right. Appreciate the feedback. The topic for this week being October 24th, and here in the Midwest, it's, basically, I guess what some guys would start to call pre-rut, or signing phase, or signing stage, or whatever you want to call it. But we're going to be talking a little bit about that, similar to how we addressed the October lull a couple weeks ago, and we're just going to be giving you our point of view. Let me go ahead and bring Jake in. There we go. How's it going, Jake?
Yeah. Can everybody hear me?
I can hear you.
I hope. Okay. Yeah, I wasn't sure. I have it on my Wi-Fi, and I don't know if the quality's bad or not. I know it's a little laggy on my side, but I'm pretty sure it's just my internet. But
yeah, these lives tend to lag 10 to 20 seconds behind as well.
Yeah, the weather, it plays a toll here as well, I guess. But
Jamie, I see you on there. What's up, Jamie? We're going to get you on here one of these days. For the guys that don't know, Jamie Murray is up in Alberta, and we covered his elk hunt, about a little over a month and a half ago, and tonight he was sending me pictures of his freezer full of elk meat, which hard to beat. That's one of the highest end venisons you can find out there. So yeah,
I haven't had the opportunity to have very much of that, but
I'm pretty jealous. I can imagine having a freezer full of elk meat.
Yeah,
next year, man, we're doing it.
I'd have to get a bigger freezer.
Yeah,
I still have a doe. I'm getting a quarter beef. I got some hog in there, but it's pretty full.
Good problems to have for sure.
Yeah, I would say hopefully have a couple more deer too.
Well, like I was saying, I don't know if Ben's going to be on. He is just sending me videos. He is out hunting public in Iowa this evening. It's tough to pass up. It was really cold here, all three of us, this past weekend. Yesterday, I don't think Ben actually got too much snow compared to Jake and I. Jake's in his area, Kansas, I guess, and then I'm in Nebraska, and I think we both got about 4 inches or so of snow Saturday evening into Monday morning, basically. And this afternoon would have been a really good time to be out with the pressure change after it finally settled down. And so Ben managed to get out. We had to work. But he got out this evening and don't blame him for prioritizing that, and I don't think he's going to make it back out of the woods in time. He went pretty deep into public with his hang and hunt setup for the year, and I don't think he had any luck. The videos I had that he sent me were just of the scenery, so it's usually not a good sign.
Some B-roll stuff.
Yeah, shooting a lot of B-roll tonight, so things aren't going too great. But what we wanted to get into then, as we were alluding to earlier, is this time of year, I guess in the Midwest, I don't know, Jake, you call it pre-rut?
Yeah.
Yeah, yep. I think I've always known it as pre-rut too. I've heard other people, a lot of times when I refer to other people, I'm talking about Jeff Sturgis with Whitetail Habitat Solutions, and he refers to it more as signing stage or signing phase. Because there's not quite a lot of quote-unquote rut activity going on, but there's these signs that it's starting to pick up, and that's kind of what we're going to be talking about more tonight, is what those signs that you should be looking for, what they mean, and then how you should play them, and also just some general do's and don'ts related to this specific time of the year when I think we're all really itching to hit it hard and start trying some crazy stuff. But that's the plan for tonight. Those that are on the lives, go ahead and chime in comments, questions, experiences that you've had. I'll try to keep up with them. We've got this beautiful outline of topics here that you can see I did such a nice job of developing for today. But at least we've got some sort of organization, I guess. So, what does pre-rut mean to you, Jake? Just in general, how would you describe this period of time?
Well, it's that period of time kind of in there when them younger bucks, or the few of them bucks, start kind of getting on their feet a little more. The bucks come more daylight. You see them a little more in the daylight, especially on camera and out of stands or off the road, whatever you guys are doing. But usually, right now, let's see, October 15th. I usually start, except for this season, I usually start right here in mid-October when I start my hunting season. Just because I've never really hunted early season much. So normally I start in pre-rut and go all the way in through December. It's pretty cold, but that's the way I like to hunt. I like seeing all them deer on their feet. But pre-rut, man, these bucks are, especially these young ones, are kind of starting to sniff around just a little. I seen one this morning from work. He was kind of sniffing. It was just a little 2x2 muley, but he was kind of sniffing around a little bit. But these deer are kind of waiting for them hot does to come in, and getting up off their feet. It definitely makes for a better sit in the tree stand. You see a lot more bucks out from my experiences, which makes it a little more enjoyable.
Yeah. Do you think that the younger bucks tend to get going a little bit sooner?
I personally believe that. I'm not sure if that's 100% true, but I think so. I think them younger bucks, it's kind of like a young teenager, how it goes. But yeah, I think so. I always see the young, 2-bys, 3-bys coming into calls, coming into scents a lot sooner than you would see, the mature bucks, 4 or 5-year-olds, on their feet coming into calls and stuff like that. It's a little easier to call them younger ones in early than it is them older ones, for sure. But
yeah,
I haven't checked just to see anything, so I haven't. Just like I said, that young buck this morning, and hopefully, I'm sure they're all getting on their feet from what I've heard.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, you see some of the activity from the more mature bucks, but it's always in the dark, even still at this time of year. I guess depending on your, going back to the October lull, let's assume that you're on pressured property and they've had to transition for bedding or food or whatever, or because of pressure. I think you start to see them doing some of the things that we'll talk about tonight, but they're still doing it in full-on nocturnal mode at this point. such as the scrapes and the rubs and these things that we're going to talk about. They usually are working those things in the dark. Compared to some of the younger bucks, you start seeing them breaking daylight on this stuff a lot easier. Like Jake said, just horny little teenagers that, you know, and I think
Absolutely.
they're trying to have a chance by being first to the bait, you know, or first on the scene. But so some of the other stuff I do see, I'll just jump in the comments here. Jamie is saying that their rut doesn't start for a bit yet. Usually hits full about mid-November. It's not too different here, Jamie, really. It's really typically it's that into that first week of November, second week of November, somewhere in there. Basically, I would call that more the peak rut, where we'll talk about that another week or two, but I think peak rut is more like defined by you can be out there any time of day. And I mean, a buck could be there at 1 p.m. Like, it doesn't matter. When it's peak rut, that's what's on. You could catch a buck cruising hard, nose to the ground, from sun up to sundown. Your chances aren't any better at any moment. That's kind of what I think of for peak rut, and that is usually into the first week, into that second week of November even. Problem here for me in Nebraska is we have rifle season right on the edge of that. You'll hear me oftentimes voice frustrations with the practices in Nebraska, but second weekend of November, so the second Saturday in November is the start of rifle season. So it's always right on the edge of peak rut. There's actually some new stuff coming out where landowners can get rifle tags a week earlier, so they'll actually be rifle hunting the first Saturday in November, which that's going to be rifle hunting right during peak rut. Which is just going to put more pressure on the bow hunter to be, you know, I'm a little more aggressive early season than Jake has been, because stuff like that, he doesn't have to contend with rifle season in the heart of the rut in Kansas. And now we're going to have rifle season even earlier for landowners, which in my side of Nebraska, it's almost all landowners. So it's going to make it tough. I'm not going to complain about it. Just going to say it's going to make it tough and change some things. Last year, the second Saturday in November actually fell, like, I think a Sunday was the first or something. So the second Saturday was actually really far into November. Like, what is that, the 20, I don't even know, 14th or something instead of the 9th or whatever it normally is. But it was like there was a whole extra week of bow season during the rut, and it was awesome. It's probably the most fun I've had with just the amount of buck activity. I got a shot at that giant that I was chasing last year on November 12th, and it was a Tuesday, I think. So the first rifle must have been like the 16th or somewhere, I don't even know. But it was just later, so you could really tell the difference. But anyway, getting back on topic, try to keep it on topic with the pre-rut and signing phase. So let's start breaking down some of the signing, Jake, that people should be looking for. Let's just go. What do you want to start with? You go ahead and lead with one of the phases or one of the types of signing.
Oh, are you talking as far as rubs and stuff like that, or are you talking deer movement? Well,
let's go with rubs or scrapes or just one of those, and I'll try to throw up some pictures for people that are on the live.
Yeah, my favorite's actually them rubs. I like hunting over those. It's kind of fun to watch the deer come and rub on those right in front of you if you can find a correct line, or a rub and a scrape line. Them rubs, I tend to have a lot of my sets over some, just by coincidence and just, I think, personal preference, if it's in the trees or on the field edge. But I've had the best luck over some rubs. I've had one set I've had hunting over a rub. I had 6 or 7 different deer. I was early in the season, or early in my hunting career, I should say. A bunch of young bucks, but it's still quite interesting watching them hit that. And leave their scent, and then all of them bucks have to do the same. Especially on moving on to the scrapes, like licking branches and things like that. You'll start seeing them branches busted up a little bit more. I have noticed it. I noticed it on my last set actually. A few decent scrapes starting. I don't normally start them myself. I know a few people that do scrape starters and stuff like that. I tend to have the privilege to be able to find them on my own. I mean, I should say find them, or have the bucks be able to put them there themselves. So I never have created a mock scrape. I know some people do, and they do have good luck hunting over those. I don't know if you've hunted or used or set up a mock scrape, Matt, or anything like that. I've put a few scent droppers on some that's already established, but I have never created my own like some people I see online, which is just a different style hunting. Everybody does something different.
Yeah, we'll get to it. The rub thing. So, assuming that maybe somebody listens to this that's really new, how would you describe what a rub is? And I'll put up a picture. I'm going to put up a picture of a fresh rub here.
Yeah, fresh rub is definitely going to be orangish in color if it's really fresh. Of course, it's you can always see that the wood shavings at the bottom of the trees. They've definitely a sign that it's really fresh. I think a deer prefers a tree maybe 4 inches in diameter, kind of like a wooden post. Wood fence post, I'd say in diameter is about perfect. And you'll see them if the branches are, say 5 foot high to start. That would be probably a good tree that a deer would, enjoy rubbing on. But I've never really found a tree that, it's full of branches and them trying to, rub on that main stump. But that would be a fresh rub, that orangish in color. And I even kind of pay attention to the old ones, year by year is a little bit different. But I have one rub that doesn't get hit a whole lot. It does get used, so it's a little bit more brown, tannish in color. It gets, some of them bigger bucks just, I would say, use it. There's probably an 8-inch tree on this one set, and it gets hit towards like right at rut. But they'll only hit just a little bit of it. But like I said, them orange rubs are definitely the ones you want to pay attention to, is what I call them.
Yeah, and on this, I showed you the picture, and he actually described the picture I showed about those 4-inch diameter trees with the branches up a ways and the shavings and orange. Let me throw that picture back up real quick while I'm talking about it. I'm gonna leave Jake on the screen, and and then in the background here you see this little tiny conifer. You will see some of them kind of rub those little tiny, almost shrub-looking conifers up, just shaking it and maybe cleaning a little bit or something. But this 4-incher right here, this is a pretty classic looking tree for a good rub. And then obviously the rub is, what's the purpose of them doing the rubbing, Jake?
Early season, be cleaning velvet off their antlers. Mid post or pre-rut, like I said, now is probably leaving their scent down just a little bit. Them dominant bucks really just try to leave their forehead gland scent.
Yeah.
Also with licking branches and the scrapes and stuff like that, but specifically the rubs is them bucks leaving their scent. Trying to show who's all man in the area.
Yeah, so the forehead gland scent is something to remember, and it's going to come up in a little bit. Let's see, the other picture I showed, and Jake's still on the screen here because I got the pictures on there, but this is an old rub, and this is actually more like a really old rub. This is a scarred up tree. So people probably see this and recognize it and maybe don't realize that was because of a deer. But that's a scarred tree. Basically, they broke the bark. They rubbed the bark off, and the bark never regrows, and the tree doesn't grow exactly right. So that's a really old historic rub. But then getting back to the rubs, where do you typically see them rubbing? Like if you are out and you're wandering around and trying to learn this stuff, and you're out on a public piece and you find some of these bigger, fresher rubs right now, what does that signify to you? Like, what's going on in that area?
Well, of course, a lot of buck movement, but I generally find them in either pinch points or funnels, or where trails come together, where all these deer are coming into one. I would definitely set up on them spots. If I was been watching, the Hunting Public series, he just sat up right off a trail, on a rub that was right off the access path, and literally had a buck, right there. Definitely something you want to be hunting over. And I generally find them, like I said, at the trail intersections. Not usually generally by the water, but like trail intersections, and then field edges, of course, always. It's just a go-to, I would say. It's just an easy scrape line for them to work, or a rub line, or whatever you're paying attention to. But I'm definitely setting up on that early or mid-season, pre-rut season, if I can find, a lot of action.
And what about the rubs you see earlier in the year, and like in reference to a buck's bedding area?
Well, generally pretty close.
Yeah.
If you can find, they kind of get up, and like I said, I was watching early season, I had a few bucks get up, like 3 o'clock, right before, right as you were getting into this tree stand, but kind of get up, and you can watch them kind of stretch a little bit, and then I seen them, rubbing right there in their beds, and them rubs are generally worked over pretty well, and these in this particular area were small sapling trees, like you had pictured. And to me, I always thought when I was younger, oh, it's a small buck if it's a small tree. It's not generally true, but just over the years, you gain a little knowledge as you go. But that's what I used to think. I used to set up over the biggest rubs, but if you just set up over a good, early season, if you can find some, you're definitely going to be in generally close to the bedding area that they're in. But
yeah, so I'd say if you're out there earlier season and you're seeing rubs, you're looking at, it's more of a buck marking his territory, stretching, whatever. Just, this is my home. I feel comfortable here. Not so much he's trying to let anybody he's letting people know he's still putting down some scent. But he's either rubbing the velvet off or whatever. But if you're seeing fresh rubs in September, October, a lot of times it's really close. You're really close to their bedding, probably, or on a trail going in and out of their bedding. And then now this time of year, you're seeing them start to lay down those rubs where they're marking not their home ground, but they're letting the littler bucks and they're letting the does know that, boss is here. And
yeah,
you're going to know because he's going to be around, and he's going to rub on top of every rub he sees, and he's going to be laying down his, his pheromones, his forehead gland scent. Letting the does know that he's ready, basically, and letting all the other bucks know that he's ready and getting ready. So that's rubs. Another one that Jake mentioned that people hear a lot too is probably talking about scrapes. And even for me, when I was a new hunter, it took me a while to get them right, like which is which. It doesn't really make sense to me. But
yeah.
It seems like they're scraping their antlers and rubbing on the ground, but it's vice versa, and you hear the lingo enough and get to know what people are talking about. So start looking for scrapes. What does a scrape look like to be looking for, Jake, first of all?
You're looking for them low hanging limbs. I'd say, let me think here, about 5 foot tall, I'd say is key, or even 6 on good ones, but 5 foot tall, them twigs and branches are all snapped over. Of course, you're looking for fresh twigs and stuff like that scraped over. And then if you're looking down at the ground, you're going to see all them leaves probably gone away from the area if it's worked heavily. You're going to see that ground, fresh dirt exposed, maybe even some urine in it, a lot of does and stuff, or whatever leaves their scent in it. And if it's not hit too hard, you're going to see the leaves, covering it. But I wish I need to start taking pictures of all this stuff that I see so I can put it in our videos and stuff, because I failed to take pictures on the way into the stands and stuff. But I do hunt over all these. That's just definitely key. But like I said, that fresh dirt, them twigs snapped over, them licking branches up high, they just really clearing out, like you said, they're rubbing their feet on the grounds, but they're actually scraping their paws and hooves and, working the branches over with their antlers and snapping them branches off with their mouth as well. But
and what are they doing that for
everybody? What's that?
And what are they hitting that spot for?
Of course, leaving their scent and checking scent, who's all been there, and like you said, on the rubs, kind of hitting that. I would say, like during pre-rut, they're hitting the scrape line, is what I'd call it. If you can find more than an area, you just work down the edge. And if you can set up over that, anywhere along that scrape line, who knows what could come in and try to leave their scent down in there. So, that's definitely a key spot to hunt rut, pre-rut, little, whatever. It's generally along field edges on them scrape lines, just because it needs access for the deer. But definitely looking for that fresh dirt pod.
Yeah, so that picture I had up when Jake was talking, I'm going to go back to your screen, Jake, and just show those pictures and talk, because I don't have them on the split screen. So this is that scrape that it's not my picture, I just got off the internet, but it's a good example of what Jake was talking about. You can see where he's scraping the pine needles away, and then right above that, 4 or 5 feet up, you've got the branches broken off. You can see by the dead tip branches, etc., that they've broken, licking them or racking them a little bit. And I just want to show you some other pictures here that I have of basically Jake was talking earlier about mock scrapes and mock licking branches, which is something that I do some of for a couple of reasons. If you put them in the right place, you can basically take inventory of all the bucks on that property with one camera. You're not getting habit, you're not getting data on habits like trails, etc. But if you want to just get inventory on like kind of what's in that area, if you have a good placed scrape or a licking branch or something, it's going to bring every decent buck from that property to that spot. But you really have to have it in the right place, and it has to be set up right, and the cameras can't be obvious, etc., etc. So I'll show you, this is on a public property, and this is one that I've actually been setting up for 3 years now, and it's starting to get, I did find kind of a natural scrape line leading to the back area, bedding, really thick bedding on this public property. And between during season and after season and pre-season scouting and walking around and just getting to know that public area, started to see these scrape lines. And so I did open up this mock scrape line, I would say, kind of along that line. But I opened it up and set it up where I knew I'd be able to hunt over it at some point one of these years. And now that it's been there long enough and my camera is really not visible, my camera is really high and a long ways away, as you'll be able to tell with the pictures. But it's worked because now it's just become their natural spot. But let me see if I can pull up the pictures of it here. Try to make it big enough you can see it if you're on your phone. So this is a doe hitting that scrape just a few days ago. But it's quite a distance off. Unfortunately, Jake can't see it, but I've probably sent him some of the pictures of these bucks that hit it. And the scrape line leads right back to where I have a tree stand, etc. And you can almost even see the deer trail behind this doe going south there where it's heading, but she's hitting that scrape and looking at it. There's a tree right in front of her, and at one point I had actually put the camera on that tree, and it completely killed the scrape that they were already hitting. I didn't have cameras out there yet, but they had already opened up the scrape. This was last year, and I put the camera on that tree at their eye level, and it was the dumbest thing I've done, because I went back and got that camera after the year, and there's only a handful of pictures on it after that. So I have no question that the presence of that camera and that little bit of scent of mine likely completely killed that scrape. But let me show you then quick before I jump off of this subject. Here's a pretty decent public land buck come in just shortly after that doe, and he's coming in to check that scrape. And this is at 3 o'clock in the afternoon in a public property. So this is kind of a sign of, like Jake and I were talking about, with the pre-rut starting to pick up. He's got decent, 4x4 there, but he's probably only a 2.5-year-old buck. So he's a little bit younger. He looks like he's going to be a toad if he gets the chance to grow. But he's probably got that toad genetics in him, and he's already wanting to get up and start checking this. It's 3 in the afternoon, and he's going to check that scrape in the middle of the day, because it's not far from probably where he's bedding. So it's kind of just a early afternoon stretching his legs, gonna go check that scrape just to see if there's a chance. Just happens to be shortly after that doe was already there. That's a good example. So that's just a plain scrape on the ground, taking advantage of already having hanging cover there, that 4 or 5 foot high branch that they're already wanting to hit. And as far as opening a scrape, Jake said he doesn't usually do too many mock ones on his own, but as far as opening a scrape in August or September, don't put eustrus in it. That's one of the don'ts that I'm gonna say. They're not stupid. A doe's not gonna go into heat in July or August or September, and it's just an alarm that it's fake, basically, especially to a mature deer. One of those horny teenagers might get fired up about it, but otherwise, we can do stuff like they do make. There's several companies that make buck forehead gland or any of those other kinds of scents, and you can actually use that, spraying it on the branches above, something like that. And I mean, the most classic or easiest way to take advantage of it is, or the easiest thing to do that I do, is just human pillion it, man. You're out there, you've probably been drinking some water or whatever you drink while you're walking around in the woods, and open up a scrape and just put a little scent in it that way. Your human urine just is intriguing at that point. It's not necessarily a deterrent, or it's not a sign that it's a human, whatever. It's just opening up a scrape. Works for me, and honestly, it really works when the rut's on. If you are walking to a stand and you're walking down a scrape line, and you don't think that they've hit those scrapes yet, just watch a buck. Go put some of your fresh urine in there on your way in, and if that buck hits it, he's gonna get pissed off, because it's totally foreign to him, and it's gonna get him pretty pretty wound up about what's going on. But that's just one example. The other thing I'll show you here before we kick over is we talked some. Well, Jake, you're on there. You're going to show that forehead gland stuff, right? You got some there.
Yeah, I actually got this in, of course, a box. I was going to try to get some out if I was going to get out this weekend. The weather was horrendous this last weekend. This is the buck bomb forehead gland scent. What he was talking about, it's artificial, synthetic. You hang it on the trees above the scrape. That would be what he was talking about with the forehead gland scent. I've seen it two different, a couple different things, but I was looking forward to trying that out. And of course, you're just classic, your estrus. You're coming on late season. This thing, it says attracts deer from September to February. I don't know about the whole September part. I just found that kind of comical or funny. Or you were talking, just a little bit ago, how it could kind of give it away. That's something's not right. Those are just a couple different things that you can possibly use. That forehead gland scent thing, just little wafers, they hang on the limbs. I've used them in the past on existing scrapes. They come in, I've seen a few hit them on cameras, but anything you can use for your advantage, I guess.
Yeah, and I just real quick tried to find the other bottle, but I can't find it. I do have some spray that I was using that is probably in one of the preseason packs in the truck that hasn't got unpacked yet. But when I was going out, the other thing I was going to show then too, let's say I've got this one property I'm hunting and it's on lease ground, and there's an area in deep timber where there's just a ton of trail intersections that bleed together from terrain funnels, and it's not your classic field edge line, right? But I think you could really hunt hard in there during the rut, and I wanted to kind of get something started in there. So I put down a scrape, and there wasn't any really good licking branches to put it by that was on the existing trails. You know, you don't want to put it clear off the trail because they're not going to wander clear off the trail to find that. It's the same concept as like your mineral sites and stuff. So anyway, the thing I was trying this year, they do have, that I didn't get the chance to try, this company Hodag has these lick and branch things kind of on a spring, and you can just put a branch out there basically anywhere. But I didn't get a chance to put that out yet. That's hopeful for next year. The thing I did try this year is hemp rope, which I'll throw up a picture here of one of my hemp ropes. Let's see.
Who did you get that idea from? Was it Ted Miller or something like that? Or
I can't honestly remember exactly who. I've seen it on a few things, and then I think Jeff Sturgis maybe was talking about it with Whitetail Habitat Solutions as well. So it's a way to create that 4 or 5 foot off the ground licking spot. And unfortunately I can't zoom in any closer on this picture, but right in the middle of this picture, if you look at the ground, you can obviously see my scrape line, or not my scrape line, but the scrape I put into the sand here. This is a property that was major flooded a few years ago, and it's still got river sand everywhere. It's disgusting, but you put that scrape in the sand, and then you've got you don't have really good foliage above it, but you're able to put that hemp rope there. And the key is that knot is about 4 to 5 feet. You know, it's about chest level, I would say, for me, above the ground. And then you fray the bottom. And then I sprayed a bunch of forehead gland scent on there. And with this spot, this isn't on the ground I was talking about. I don't have a picture of that one that I set up. This is on a different property. And I wasn't having a ton of success with this because this one is actually not too far from a field edge. So I did go ahead when I was out there recently, and I moved that to show you a different example here. I moved that to the field edge, and you can see there was a picture of a doe, but I don't know what I did with that. In the middle, in this picture, you can see in the middle and the top, I've got my knot hanging down. It's a little bit lower than I would have liked it to be, but just the way that this little spot's set up, and I've got my scrape on the ground. And there's been a few pictures of some does hitting that scrape, and now you see this 1.5-year-old, or maybe a 2.5-year-old buck, just small rack, coming in at 3:57 in the afternoon a couple days ago. And he's coming in to hit that scrape out in the open on this field edge. So I mean, you can create it. You just have to be smart about it and be patient. And I'm not claiming to be the expert. I do a ton of reading and listening to people I would say are experts, and basically just regurgitate what they're saying and put it into practice. And I see some theoretical, or the theoretics come to life, I would say. As far as some don'ts, Jake, when you are looking at rubs and scrapes, what are some don't ever do that things that pop into your mind, or that maybe you see on Facebook and it makes you shake your head and you wish that those people knew better?
Well, I tend to honestly stay a little bit farther away, especially if I'm just, in there checking my cameras and not really sending it down the best. I see people walking through them, just on normal trails. I know you said you can pee in them. I've done that before, honestly. It's just to try it out, and of course I have a camera. And then another thing also is, like you had mentioned, putting that camera at eye level. That's just this, when I first started hunting, I'd always put it waist level, strapping down, facing directly at it, But coming, realizing and watching more and more hunting shows and the way they do things, they can make all them brackets and stuff. You can put them up high, take an extra stick in there, put it up 10 foot high, So one, the deer don't see it, the flash or the infrared or whatever everybody says, the blinking lights or whatever. And then two, it just, keeps it out of sight for other people as well, But, yeah, just getting in close and kind of disturbing them or rubbing around with your hands or trying to make it look like there's more. I've seen people moving the leaves away with their hand, that's just, I'd grab a stick if you're going to do anything, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. And I used to carry this little rake that I had outside in the, just a little 3-prong rake. I guess I have made one before. I use that 3-prong rake thing, and I kept it outside all the time just so the scent don't get on it. But that would probably be a don't anymore. I'd rather just use natural sticks and stuff like that if I'm gonna scrape it away.
Yeah.
But getting it close is definitely, and putting your scent down like that is definitely a no-go.
I see people touching. Yeah, you don't want to be touching anything, touching the rub, touching the licking branches, touching anything in the region that could leave your scent. And some of the other stuff that he hit on there, like the camera, not only like being able to see like the infrared, but hearing the click. Such great hearing, and
especially in the older,
being able to make out. So that tree I put it in that I showed you, it was a big tree, and I was just like, oh, it'd be so cool to have a picture of a buck right here hitting this. And it's probably not so much that you put the camera there, it's when you put the camera there. Like, it wasn't there before, and now it is.
There you go, all of it.
And even though that tree is really big, they pick out the outline of that weird-looking box. So they make things that you can break up the outline of the camera. Get it up high, like Jake was saying. Those pictures I showed you, that camera is a good 10 to 12 to 15 feet even in the air. And angled down toward that from a ways away, probably 10 to 15 yards away even. Undetectable to them and undetectable to majority of public that might be walking through. And I would say, I mean, if you had that camera there year long and then that scrape open there and they're used to it being in there, you might be able to get away with it depending on the camera and what its infrared flash is like, and if it clicks when it cycles or anything like that, those things that give it away. But you might be able to get away with it if it was pre-existing. It's when you change things, and you unnaturally change things. Like if you go into a scrape and you make it look like an elk wallow, it doesn't attract more deer because the scrape is enormous. It makes them be like, that shit ain't right. Like, something weird there. No, ain't nobody doing that here. And also being able to recognize that, I guess, turkeys could do that too. So if you're getting real excited, recognize that turkeys can scrape up the ground like that. And obviously you're looking for 3-toed and 2-toed scrapes on the ground. Let's see. One thing that we kind of talked about was trails. Jake, you've mentioned about hunting trails. What are you looking for trail-wise at this point?
I'm honestly still at this point, it's almost Halloween. I always have the best luck around Halloween, getting things fired up and everything, calling wise. But trails, I'm still trying to get, on them last deer that are still somewhat patternable, if you can. I'm still hunting trails from bedding to field edge or along field edges. If there's like a cut or a transition change, maybe a dike or that's what I call a dike, but a high-rise, long terrace looking thing. And then also railroad tracks are right out here. Railroad tracks are definitely a good easy corridor for these deer, and I don't know the legals of shooting them off the tracks. I never have, and I don't think you should. I probably should look into that because I do have some properties with tracks, but those are definitely solid trails you want to set up on. Just ease of access from bedding to corn along them scrape lines. You put all these things together, and you're not going to go wrong trying to sitting on one of those trails.
And let's see the other. Let's see. Get back. There we go. Another point we kind of hinted about. Jake said he saw today a younger buck sniffing. Like, what are you looking at that's different that they're starting to do right now?
I couldn't get in super close to see like lip curling and stuff like that, trying to smell in the air, but there was a group of 3 does and this single buck, and he had his nose to the ground. He wasn't chasing by no means, and I'm not saying that he was running 100 mile an after, right up close to him, but he was following right behind him on a single trail, nose down. But like I said earlier, I always see the couple, the younger deer go first. And, he might be just testing the waters or whatever and checking them 3 does, and then he might go elsewhere. But if you can find that early doe, I was reading an article earlier about it, just hunting the does in particular, still hunting the does this early season, because you never know what doe is just starting to go in. And these bucks are, any little bit, they'll be on their feet ready to rock at any time. So just hunt the doe still. I've seen, which I believe in that 100% too. So I'm still hunting food. I'm still hunting sort of the bed, kind of close, and finding them does as well. And you can't go wrong with hunting does in the rut.
Yeah. Let me show you. Jake mentioned lip curling. I wish I'd have had this picture uploaded, but I have this picture from the rut last year on a public property that hopefully you guys can see.
It's kind of common.
Looks like he's bugling, but that's what he's talking about with lip curling, where they're really trying hard to catch a whiff of something.
Yeah, they're like licking their nose, and they honestly they curl their lips up, or their lip up, I should say. And yeah, that did look. I remember that picture you showed me last year. But those are just signs that I pick up on, and of course bucks on their feet in daylight. But anything that you kind of key on? Like,
let me show one thing. So I have some cell cameras out, which are really beneficial sometimes, and then really frustrating other times. I'll piggyback off of some of what Jake said with the doe thing. So I took a chance on Saturday, I believe it was. I don't remember. Saturday, because it snowed all day Sunday. Saturday night, and I went into a lease piece, and a piece that I had been hunting some, and my cell cameras had been showing quite a bit of action at sundown and sunup in the same little area of cut beans. And I thought, I'm not too worried about boogering it up a little bit, and I knew I could sneak in there pretty good. And I went in there super early, and I tried to set the stage to catch one of those feisty, frisky bucks. And I took my decoy out, and the doe decoy, and I did just put like a touch of eustress on a rag and went and drug it down what would be a popular trail to get to right where I was. And then it was the trail that had been downwind of her too, because I thought, if anybody catches her by eyesight, and you guys will be able to see this hunt at a later date, I'll get it edited up, but I figured if anybody catches her from eyesight, from the standing corn and bedding area, maybe they'll try to get downwind of her and see if she's hot, and then I'll have this little bit of scent out there. And if I can get somebody onto that trail, Jake and I also work with wind scent this year, vaporizers, and I did have the wind scent vaporizer set up. I just didn't turn it on. And they have a seduction eustress vapor in there that would carry, like they say, 300 yards. And so if there was a little bit of action, I was actually going to turn it on and see if we could really get somebody going. But unfortunately, I just had a couple yearlings come in and check the doe out, and it's pretty funny, really sketchy to them. It's just a good example that if the time's not right, it's really hard for me to say. At the time, I thought, well, this is a good example that I was too soon, and they're smarter than I think that they are, right?
Yeah.
But then getting closer to nightfall, there were coyotes all around me. And I kind of wonder if that boogered it up pretty bad. I think the coyotes looked at the doe, and she's out there all by herself, and I think the coyotes wanted to make a play, and I think it really boogered up any chance I might have had, and I can't really tell if it was the coyotes or because of the decoy or whatever, or because the estrus was down and they took it as a false alarm or whatever it was. The coyotes really screwed it up. You'll see in the video, it's pretty crazy. They're like circling the decoy and have the infrared camera on them because it's dark, and they're trying to set that decoy up. And dude, they actually hunted me on the way out of the property because I was carrying the decoy out, and every time I turn around there's 3 sets of eyes following me. It was pretty nerve-wracking, I would say. I thought I was gonna have to use my bow in the middle of the night. But
Target practice.
just a good example of trying that out, using the doe. I knew if I put a buck out there, obviously it's not gonna work. I'm not gonna be able to entice a fight at this time of year, but I might be able to get a buck to be frisky and think that he's found the first hot doe and start a little competition there. Just who knows if it would have worked if it wasn't for the coyotes. But I do want to show you on that property, because the next night, and Jake kind of laughed because I sent these guys these pictures, the very next night they let's see, maybe they're on your screen, let me see. Well, I'll find them here in a minute. Let me look at, so we kind of talked about the trails. Then Jake, you just kind of talk about what chasing starts to look like, and I'll try to find these pictures real quick.
Okay. Yeah. Especially this year, seeing deer start to chase for me is going to be slim. I used to be able to drive to work and see all these things, driving 20 miles of country to work, being able to see all these deer start doing what they're going to do, and which kind of is the downfall of living in town now, but not being able to see all them deer. But chasing, you're really seeing them deer out on, in the middle of field edges or out up into pastures. It's quite comical watching the effort these deer put in. They can, run miles and miles and miles, nose to the ground, working themselves over, breathing hard. It's pretty fun in the mornings to hear these deer come crashing through the timbers, just running and running and running. Gets you real excited, makes you want to grab the bow real quick and get ready, because you never know what's going to happen when chasing starts. You just, you start hearing footsteps and you just got to be ready, because them deer come in 90 mile an hour. And even on the road, you see a lot more deer hit during the rut. There's just deer zipping everywhere. They don't really care. They got one thing on their mind, it's the big P. And yeah, it's just nose to the ground, breathing heavy, hard. You're hoping you can get out there and scout these deer and figure out when that is or whatever. You can use trail cameras. You see them deer with nose to the ground on the trail. It's a good indicator. But yeah, that's a good time. I love hunting the rut, and nothing gets better.
So here's those pictures. This is actually the cut beans where I was, and this is 24 hours later. Just further evidence of, one, why cell cameras are great and evil at the same time, because this was just like a jab in the side of, you did all that work 24 hours ago and had no shot at it, and here's what's going on the very next night. And it's also happening again tonight on the same cell cameras. But it's also great because I'm not in the field. I wasn't out there yesterday, and I worked today, and I got intel to let me know that it's starting. And you can see here on these pictures that here's just a quick snapshot from this cell camera. Unfortunately, again, Jake can't see it, but you can see these 2 younger does, and it's a younger buck, but he's got his nose down and he's pushing her, and he's trying to get up there so he can sniff her and see if she's hot. You can see there he's pushing her around. He's got his neck puffed up a little bit, he's got his nose down. That's classic starting to look for that hot doe. Again, it's a younger buck doing it, but it's just a good decision or understanding of the game's beginning. That's the kind of thing you're looking for. And then you'll start to see, if I had a bunch more pictures up here, I'd show you. There's older bucks that are hitting the scrapes, but they're in the dark. And I've got some older bucks that have been just up and moving around a lot more, getting closer to the sunbreak and sundown hours, just not quite there yet. They're just kind of inching toward it. And that's the kind of stuff I would say. We kind of covered some do's and don'ts. Jake talked about, he's as far as some do's. I guess, what would you say if you went like 3 big do's and 3 big don'ts for this time? Put you on the spot. Recap some of the stuff you've said. 3 big do's for hunting right now, and 3 big don'ts to don't booger it up.
Yeah, 3 big do's are definitely. This is an obvious one, but I'm definitely, you're definitely still wanting to stay scented down 100%. The rut, you can almost do. I mean, you can't do anything you want, but you still want to stay hunting minded. You want to stay on task and everything like that. So, keep scented down, keep the same routine as you have been. Still pick the wind direction walking into the stands. Still know that they're still bedded down in there somewhere. But that's probably one do. Definitely, second do, definitely get out there and hunt if you can. The weather's dropping. I'm going to say that. Temperature's dropping right now. I couldn't get out this last week. This weather was terrible. It sucks. I'm sure I'll check my last camera that's in there and realize that I should have been in there like normal. But this next weekend is a for sure. I'll switch to a don't. Like I said, definitely don't be boogering up in those scrapes and stuff like that. Like I said, I just seen a picture of a guy on a social media page. He was standing there, knelt down beside it in the scrape, holding the tree with the where the rub is with the selfie, taking that, you're still putting your scent down on that. You're boogering up the area pretty well, as hunting public guys would say. Let's see, another don't get carried away with the calling. I mean, I see people hitting that grunt tube and smacking them horns, and that could come in handy. I'm definitely grunting a little bit right now. Probably going to be tinkling the horns a little bit. Matt's laughing at my lingo, but that's what I'm going to say. And another don't. Let me think here. I don't really know another don't, man. Just get out there, I guess.
Yeah.
What would you say? What's your number one don't do?
Number one don't do? I would say that's the noise making for sure. I see it on a lot of social media, and even when Jake's talking about that dude taking the selfie, don't think we're making fun of you, because heaven knows I've done the same stupid stuff. And there's no way until you learn. Too bad it usually costs you what you don't even realize what it costs you, basically. But number one, I would say my number one don't is definitely getting over aggressive with the noise making. I was in a public ground one time, and it was my fault for being so close to the access path. But some dudes went into a ground blind that I knew was there, and it just sounded like a deer orgy. I mean, they had like doe bleats and rattles and grunts and everything. I'm learning as far as like, I was bleeding a little bit with the decoy out there, but I would not make any noise without a visual. As far as like blind noise, that's what I say. I would not make any blind noise without a visual with it. So if you're gonna blindly grunt or blindly bleat, make sure there's a visual to match with it. At this time of the year, it changes though. I said blindly on purpose. If you see a buck out there and you're visually connected with them, you might grunt to try to get his attention and see if you can get him to hear you. and want to come over and investigate. If you have a visual, then it's even better. If you watch my hunt from last year, the huge miss, I had the giant that I was after was out on the cornfield 150 yards away, chasing small bucks out and pushing does around, and I started grunting really hard until I got his attention. And because it got his attention and he looked over and he saw my decoy, it was on. Like, he's just a beeline straight toward, he wanted to fight. But if I didn't have that decoy there, I don't know if he'd have came that hard to investigate. He might have circled around and tried to sneakily figure it out and busted me, but because I had the visual out there and I saw him to grunt hard at him, it worked. But the blind grunting to see what will come in blindly is probably not going to help, not going to work very often, unless you have a visual out there to match it. The rattling, that's a different story. Blindly rattling and doing it well, I think works. The buck I did take on public ground a couple years ago, I rattled, and it was earlier in the year. I just knew there was a lot of buck activity in that area, and I thought in the morning maybe I'd get somebody pique their interest, and it worked. And it was blindly rattling, and he came and stood right at the base of my tree. It's crazy how they pinpoint, triangulate where that noise came from, but he stood right at the base of my tree trying to figure out where the heck that noise was coming from. The other don'ts, Jake hit it, boogering stuff up, getting too close in there, checking your trail cameras too much at this time, just being pressure that I would say, pressure that you get away with in September and even in early October. But if you went in there bumping around and you bumped a buck out of his bed in September, October, or I was in on that property pretty early on a place that I felt really good about especially for during the rut, and I was in there pretty early, and I had that buck, kind of, whether he knew I was there or not, but skirt me, and some issues happened in there. But I don't think it boogered him up enough, and I haven't been back into that spot at this time of year, because I know if he did it at this time, it would really change the way he's going to act. So being a lot more cautious and aware that you can't just go in there and bump them out of their beds and think that they're going to come back in 2 or 3 days. They might completely shift what they're doing at this time of the year. Dues are the same as Jake. I'm OCD about scent control. Saw a guy the other day ripping about how you don't have to worry about it during the rut, and you might be right, but you might be wrong. Like, it's never going to hurt you to play scent control and play the wind. It's never going to hurt you. You might not need to. You might get away with it during peak rut when their guard's way down, but who knows? I don't want to be the guy that finds out that, actually he could smell. I went from doing all that stuff that I was doing hardcore, and then I gave it up, and then he busted me or something. I'm not going to take that chance on something that you can control. Do be in the trees. You got to be out there. You can't, like people say, you can't kill them from the couch, but you got to be out there getting the intel, paying your dues.
Yeah. And as far as that scent control goes, the bucks might not notice, not a whole lot at this time, but you're still hunting them does. Like I said before, them does, of course, they're going to be pushed around a little too, but they're going to be picking you off faster than anything else, because they're still, them bucks might have that one thing on their mind, and them does are still leery, walking into places and stuff like that. They don't lose their minds 100%. So trying to stay, like I said, stay in the same routine as what you do the whole season, and you're going to see drastic changes of sightings and stuff like that. If you can just stay scent free, still use the wind in your favor walking in is a big thing, and sitting in a tree stand with the correct windage. That's just no brainer. Some people just don't worry about it come rut because they think it doesn't matter, which maybe half the time it doesn't matter. But as far as what I do and what I say normally works for me is still keeping the same practices. You're just trying to hunt easier access, maybe field edges or something like that. So they're cruising, checking the scrape lines, everything like that. You can get into those places easier, not bump them out of wherever they may be, either locked down or bedded down or whatever. But definitely try to keep that scent control still under the radar.
Yeah, So the last thing I'll say, and something that Jake hinted on earlier, was hunting the does. Whether you're hunting them to kill them or not, but pay attention to the does. The bucks might be coming in to fight another buck just to make sure that buck ain't trying to get his doe, but he's got doe on the mind. All he wants is that doe. So if you're paying attention to those does, you might have a shot at that buck if you're where those does are going to be. Second reason with the does, that old doe is going to bust you as fast or faster than any mature buck, especially this time of year. Once, we're all getting excited because that mature buck's about to let his guard down. That mature doe is not. She is not going to let her guard down. She might go running by trying to get away from a buck, but she's not walking around all day with one thing on her mind. She's still really smart and still really paying attention, and she's the one that's going to wind you. She's the one that's going to start blowing and ruin your day because you weren't paying attention to her, because you didn't have scent control on, because you knew the buck was thinking with his other head and chasing does around, and you thought you'd get away with it, but that doe is not, and that doe is going to be the one that she's going to blow and she's going to go out of there. Now, why is that buck going to come in there if there's no doe there for him? And if she was hot, he's definitely going wherever she was at. So that's really big, like Jake said, hunting the doe for those two reasons. And also, if you're looking to fill your freezer, then you might be trying to kill that doe. But yeah, so that'll do for our conversation on pre-rut. If you guys have any questions or concerns, you can always message either one of us or Ben, or just send it to Middle American Outdoors pages and message us there. We'd be happy to answer, and love to hear your stories.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. Ask a question, start a conversation on the page. We really, enjoy that. Gets everybody interacted, ask us what we prefer, or, the general questions of what everybody uses for setups or whatever like that. We, just post that to our page, and every single one of us members, all three of us, will be happy to comment and try to help anybody out or give people tips. We're still learning, all of us. You learn every day, every set. So if we can try to help you, then go ahead and post a comment, and on Facebook or YouTube, Instagram, any of those. Matt for sure is on top of the ball on replying to everybody like that. But yeah, if anybody has questions, just go ahead and ask them. That we'd be happy to help.
Yeah, and realize the three of us could not be any different as far as our setups, our hunting approach, our where we're at, really, like the where we're hunting. We're all in the Midwest, but we could not be any different.
Which makes it unique.
And even our level of experience is way different across the board. So if one of us doesn't know, the other two probably do. Just have to ask the questions. And if you have topics that you want to hear us talk about or look into, we'd love to hear those as well. And we're not sure what we're doing next week, but we're all getting fired up for Halloween and getting this 2 weeks of madness kind of kicked off. And we will be on, though. We're going to keep trying to do this every week regardless, even if some of them are just recap of the excitement from the rut or content that's actually educational. Who knows? But for now, that's it for today. And make sure you guys catch this on the podcast. Share it with some folks. Like and subscribe. Help us to keep growing. And we're going to keep bringing you this content regardless. So thanks, guys. See you, Jake.
Hey, man.